Um, Hi, everybody. My name is Deborah, and I'm from Clear Minds, Better Lives. And today I'm joined by Alice Munyua, who is a family nurse practitioner, and we'll be talking about depression. How you doing, Alice?
I'm doing great. How are you, Debbie?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. So to start, I'll just ask you to introduce yourself
Mhm.
and tell us a little bit what you do.
Okay. So
Mhm,
my name is Alice Munyua,
mhm,
and I am a family nurse practitioner.
mhm.
I've been a family nurse practitioner since 2000, so it's been a long time.
Oh wow,
But
yeah.
yeah, but when I graduated,
Mhm,
I had kind of just started working. Like 1 year before I graduated, I started working in a mental health hospital.
mm,
And I loved it so much that I actually graduated, got my license, and
yeah.
never quit working as a psychiatric nurse.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I just loved it so much. I stayed there for like 10 years.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Uh-huh.
That's interesting.
Um, what I didn't know is that it was actually preparing me
Mm,
for my life's calling, I would say that.
mhm,
Because I found my niche when I went to mental illness.
mhm,
So I was doing behavior plans for the most difficult clients in the state of
mhm,
North Carolina.
mhm.
So behavior plans, those kind of things, and treatment plans for them.
Oh,
And I just loved it.
yeah, that's amazing. That sounds really great. And
Hmm.
I mean, you seem like the perfect person to be having this conversation with today, based on your experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so a little bit about me. As I said, I'm Debbie, and I've been part of Clear Minds, Better Lives for since it started. And aside from that, I am also a nursing student as well right now.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
I have also had in a lot of experience in the mental health field prior to
Hmm.
school.
Hmm.
Um, so the reason why I joined this group is because also mental health. I find mental health very important, and I also want us to kind of push to have the Kenyan community become okay with having such conversations and trying to break the stigma. So we'll go ahead and start answering some of those questions that I have prepared for you. I feel like the word depression is a very popular term that's usually used a lot, and I feel like sometimes people use it outside of its context. Can you just explain to us like what is a clinical definition of depression?
So, clinical definition of depression
Mm-hmm.
is a state of overwhelming sadness, overwhelming despair, and just just feeling really, really desperate to a point that those kind of feelings affect the way people think.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow you can't think clearly when you're going through that. So most people have trouble even maintaining a job because they lack, or they feel that the concentration is affected.
Mm-hmm.
Depression is actually the number one cause of disability in the world.
Right.
So it's a state of overwhelming sadness,
Mm-hmm.
overwhelming despair. And I had written my notes,
Mm-hmm.
and overwhelming isolation, because most people don't get out of the house when
Right.
they're,
Right. Absolutely.
yeah.
Thank you for that. What are some of the criteria that goes into diagnosing depression? You know?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Now, when most people come to see a doctor,
Mm-hmm.
they don't come out saying that I'm depressed. That's why I came. They usually come up saying that I'm having trouble sleeping, or I'm sleeping too much, or I'm feeling tired. Fatigue is the biggest number one complaint
Mm-hmm.
of people who are feeling depressed. And so when we do the diagnosis, we have to actually do a workup,
Right.
because I mean those feeling tired can be, anything can cause you to feel tired.
Right.
Maybe, yeah, maybe you're working too much. Maybe there's something wrong with your thyroid. So we first of all do a blood work to rule out other diseases.
Mm-hmm.
Hyperthyroidism is a
Mm-hmm.
disease that resembles depression so much. So we have to do the workup, and then when the blood work comes back and it's normal,
Mm-hmm.
then we conclude that maybe somebody is depressed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And is there like a certain tool that is used to kind of help narrow down that, aside from like the
Mhm.
blood test and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, the blood test, we do that to rule out
Right.
other diseases, other physical diseases,
Mm-hmm.
especially something like fibromyalgia.
Mm-hmm.
Chronic fatigue syndrome is like a little sister of depression.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to do the blood work to make sure that there is nothing physically wrong with someone, to make them feel tired,
Right.
to make them feel like they're having trouble with concentration. They can't think. Some
Right.
people can't even remember the date.
Right.
Is that bad?
Mhm. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So and then when you start talking with them, once the blood work comes back and it's normal, then you start inquiring what's going on in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And normally you'll find 4 things
Mm-hmm.
running in their life. They feel helpless.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the problem is, they feel like they don't have, they can't overcome it.
Right.
They feel helpless. The other thing is they also feel powerless.
Right.
Whatever is going on, they just feel like they don't have any power to overcome it.
Mm-hmm.
They feel powerless, helpless, and then hopeless. That's the biggest one.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody doesn't have any hope, then you know for sure they're depressed.
Yeah.
And the last one is worthlessness. When they start talking, I feel like I'm a burden to my family. I feel like maybe I shouldn't be here. Maybe life will be better without me. Then they're feeling worthless.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so once we get to that point, then, that now that they've been diagnosed with depression, what are the next steps?
Well, the next step, once the doctor concludes that you're depressed, and it doesn't take very long to do that, just asking you a few questions, you'll be able to pick out somebody who is feeling helpless, somebody who is feeling hopeless, powerless, and worthless. Then they start them on medication. So they'll give them antidepressants. The most commonly used antidepressants they're called SSRIs,
Right.
serotonin reuptake inhibitors. That's the long name for it.
Right.
But those are your Paxos, your Prozac, that, and Effexa, Wellbutrin, but mostly Prozac and Paxo are the ones that I use most. So it takes about 4 weeks.
Okay.
The doctor will tell you that it will take about 4 weeks to feel better. And normally with something like Paxo, it has a little bit of caffeine in it, the way they manufacture drugs.
Right.
So caffeine kind of picks you up a little bit.
Right.
But it still takes about 4 weeks to feel better.
Okay. And, do you encourage them to also like seek, therapy alongside using pharmacological, medication and things like that?
Yes, I always do that. Psychological help is the best medicine for somebody who is feeling depressed.
Right.
Because some people think that it's a chemical imbalance because that's how it comes out looking.
Right.
So the reason why we give SSRI is to kind of help the body maintain the balance of serotonin.
Right.
Because serotonin is what's lacking when somebody is depressed.
Right.
And the reason why they have trouble sleeping is the serotonin and melatonin work together. So serotonin is the happy hormone that you get. Right. And usually most people have that when they wake up in the morning, when the sun is up, you go outside, you just feel good.
Right.
So most people who are depressed don't have that. So they assume that because the serotonin level is low, let's replace it. Or let's give you medication to help your body not destroy serotonin too much.
Right.
So you can pick up your mood. But actually, for me, something that's going to take 4 weeks to work, I think therapy can help quickly.
Right. Right.
It can help. Yeah. So obviously you cannot leave psychotherapy out.
Right.
And when we talk about psychotherapy, psycho means something relating to the mind.
Mm-hmm.
So it's talk therapy.
Right.
That is the best therapy in the world.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Ah,
But
mm-hmm.
but yeah, I was gonna tell you
Uh-huh.
that even though talk therapy is good,
Mm-hmm.
for me, I usually encourage people to seek somebody who has spiritual knowledge. And that's the piece that I find lacking in the world, because most therapists can tell you, they can talk and they can tell you a few coping skills that you can use to fix whatever is wrong with your life. Because
Yeah.
when you are actually depressed,
Mm-hmm.
there is something wrong somewhere.
Right.
Something is not working out. Like
Right.
when I told you about people feel hopeless.
Right.
The only way you can get hope is if you're connected with your maker.
Mm-hmm.
That is our source of hope.
Mm-hmm.
So what has gone on in your life for you to feel that way? When you feel worthless, what's going on in your life to feel that way? Because
Right.
people feel worthy because they also God, the way God, like who told you you're worthless? So we start looking at those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why people feel helpless, maybe something is going on at home and they're not getting the right help that they need. So you need a counselor who is going to be able to tap into those things, but
Right.
also a counselor who has spiritual wisdom.
Yeah.
And that usually is lacking.
Mm-hmm.
And ask me your next question and I'll tell you why spiritual wisdom is so important.
Okay. Actually, go ahead and tell me what why spiritual
Okay.
help is very important. Yes, please go ahead.
So you have to be able to differentiate. This is the part that's lacking in mental illness. Otherwise, people who are depressed will actually get better quicker.
Mm-hmm.
If people could make a differentiation, there are two types of depression. There is one that has a spiritual component. Well, let me just say this. They are all spiritual. All our problems are spiritual because life is spiritual and we are spiritual beings. But there's one that there is actually a reason why somebody is getting depressed. Maybe they got fired from work. Maybe they have too many bills and they just can't make ends meet.
Right.
That is the mental part. That is the part that works very well when you do counseling, so you can give somebody a different perspective on how to solve a problem. Because there is a solution to every problem that we deal with in this world.
Yeah.
And there is also an answer to every question.
Right.
So you need a counselor who understands that and who can give you like a different perspective to look at the same problem. Now, there's another one that doesn't respond to counseling. And this is where somebody who has spiritual wisdom will be able to know. When you find depression running in a family, say your grandmother was depressed, your mother was depressed, and now you're depressed. That has a spiritual component. And usually that one requires deliverance. And when I say that, I know most people feel bad when they feel like they're dealing with a spiritual problem. They're like, oh my God, and this is where the stigma comes in, because most people, when you mention the word spiritual, they go ballistic. They are like, I'm being judged.
Right.
Does she mean that I don't have enough faith in God? Does she mean that I did something wrong? Those kind of things. That's why you find people don't like to talk about mental illness. They keep depression at the wraps and they struggle alone. So what I'm trying to say, it's not your fault. And actually, you could be a believer. You could be somebody who loves God. But when you see it running in families, something happened. Somebody opened that door for the kingdom of darkness to actually attack you. So it might not be your fault. It could be your grandmother's fault. There are some things, this is what I try to tell people. Most people think it's genetic, but it actually is not genetic. We don't pass genetic materials to our children. What we pass is habits, behaviors, and blessings, and curses. Curses comes when we do something wrong that doesn't please God. There is a door that is opened and you can invite a spirit of heaviness to affect you you affect your children and your children's children. And that is not their fault. So if they find themselves being depressed for no reason, and they feel like it's genetic, it's actually not genetic, but it is spiritual. And this is where you need somebody who understands that so they can show you, because you break this with prayer. You don't need medication for that.
Yeah.
Isn't that something
Right.
good?
Right, it is.
Yeah.
And what do you tell the person who, doesn't have a spiritual background and doesn't, also maybe does not even believe in God, and,
Yeah.
how do you help
It's
a person?
it's it's very difficult, but the same principles that apply to people who believe in God also apply to people who don't believe in God.
Mm-hmm.
There is a way you can do a mind detox.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it's going to be easier. It will actually be easier if you do have a spiritual belief.
Mm-hmm.
It's much easier when you believe in God. But even if you don't believe in God, and this is where it gets to be tricky, because now you're going to be using your own willpower.
Right.
And your own willpower is not strong enough to overcome a spiritual problem.
Mm-hmm.
A spiritual problem, you always need a higher power.
Mm-hmm.
You see?
Mm-hmm.
So you generally, you don't push your belief system on anybody.
Right.
You tell them that this could be the reason why you feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the only way to overcome it. And you let them think about it.
Right.
Most of the time they will come back aloud, because I don't know anybody in the world who wants to walk aloud their life depressed.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody who wants to be on medication for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
Because medications also have side effects.
Right.
But then you give them the choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we run out of time, I wanted to ask my last question. And my last question is about how would you educate people, more so in a Kenyan community, who really do not really understand depression, and who are kind of stuck with the stigma, and how to educate them about that, and for them to also learn ways to allow themselves to seek treatment and things like that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're feeling suicidal, suicidal is actually spiritual, because there's something that's attacking your mind that you feel that you want to destroy your own life.
Mm-hmm.
But also when we talk about suicide, we also have to understand that 54%, according to statistics, 54% of people who kill themselves really don't have any history of mental illness, no depression, nothing. It just comes as a surprise to someone. But this is where you are under attack.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to educate people and tell people that human beings are actually very, very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
We are spiritual beings, but there are some things when we are dealing with spiritual issues that we need a higher power, higher than ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But I always say this: depression is actually curable. This is not something you need to struggle with for the rest of your life.
Right.
And when you work out, everybody has to work out their salvation. The person who is affected is the one who needs to do the work
Mm-hmm.
to ensnare themselves from this disease. Because it's your mind that is affected.
Mm-hmm.
And your mind is not your brain.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Thank you so much for taking time to talk to me and everybody else who will be watching about depression. This is very insightful. I appreciate your time. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. But before I go, let me tell people to visit my Facebook page.
Right. Okay.
I am on Facebook and I post every day. You can watch videos on different other diseases and especially about mental illness, or go to my YouTube channel, which is, Alice Munyua, FNP-C.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. All right. Let me stop recording.